The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Another episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, news, reviews, previews, and interviews from around the world of wrestling. And we've got a big event coming to Brownsburg, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis on April 14th. That is the Wrestling USA Dream Team Classic. That'll be 6 p.m. at Brownsburg High School. Today on the program to talk about the Dream Team Classic is Joe Caprino, the man behind IndianaMat's.com, assistant coach at Fort Wayne Carroll School. Some of you might know of because of that Lefevre kid who came through and won like 4 Division III national titles. He's pretty good. He was from there. But Joe Caprino, known each other a very long time. Welcome officially to like real actual media in the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited. Obviously, we have a pretty big event coming up and excited to talk about it and get some people to watch some great wrestling.
Of course, Joe has also been pestering me for almost a decade for an actual Jason Bryant autograph, which he actually did receive at one point in Fargo. Where is that in your wall of fame right now?
It's framed. It's I look at it every day, and I wake up every day. How can I be more like Jason Bryant?
You're a liar, dude. You're straight up. You're straight fibbing right now. But before we even get to the Dream Team Classic, see, Joe has been a member of our wrestling media and wrestling message board chatter, I guess, collective for well over a decade, dating back to the early existence of the Matt.com and, of course, the WrestlingTalk.com, which as of today, we're recording this on April 4th. I've got to go to Australia, so I'm recording all this stuff to prep for the April 14th edition of the Dream Team Classic. So just today, we had some people that were partial to the WrestlingTalk.com get back together and created a Facebook group about it. So we're going to be closing. We're going to go back and have some real wrestling discussion. And you were one of those people, just just from a memory standpoint, that community. I mean, it was a group of friends. It was a group of people that talked wrestling, and kind of an offshoot of some of the band camp that we got sent to from the old Matt.com era. But pretty cool to see some of the bands getting back together.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's definitely exciting seeing all those names and like trying to, not knowing their their real names versus their screen names, looking at some people. I'm like, oh, I think I know who that is.
Yeah.
It's been quite a while.
What's interesting is I post as a username on an all sports message board for Old Dominion fans and such. But the Wrestling Talk was the only message board I ever posted as something other than my own name. And everybody knew it was me. So it's not like I was hiding it, but Dart Shark lived over there. That was my only other wrestling forum handle of all time, but just cool to see that rolling. But Joe, we've got something big in Virginia. 1999, we hosted the Dream Team Classic, and we had a really good team in Virginia. We thought we were really going to shake things up, and it ended up being 49-3 in favor of Team USA. Indiana hosting this thing for the first time. Let's just talk about the idea of bringing this event to Indiana and why the senior class seemed to be the one to bring this event here for.
A few years ago, we went to the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. Had a really good time with that. Our kids just enjoyed going there. Had just great event they put on there. They treat the kids like royalty, and I'd never really been to the event. Just heard that it's really great. We got on board with that a couple years ago. And then coming in this year, looking at some of our guys, I always like to try to do something good for the state, give the kids some great exposure, and started talking with Cody Bryan at Wrestling USA. And he was, going back and forth. He said a couple other states were interested and end up coming down to Indiana. I think some of our studs that were coming up, our seniors, Brayton Lee, Mason Paris, Lucas Davison, those types of guys were really big on, getting us to get the invite and showcase their talents. So pretty exciting to see those guys one last time in Indiana show off their talents, and they get to wrestle probably their toughest matches ever in their career in at home.
Yeah, there's always seems to be one major upset at this event, whether it be the Dapper Dan or what used to be the Dapper Dan, now the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic, or the Dream Team Classic here. I remember back in Virginia back in 99, the only guy to lose for Team USA was a guy named Jason Powell. And you go figure what he ended up doing in his collegiate career. Actually lost to my high school teammate, as a matter of fact. Sorry, pal. I hate to keep bringing that up, but there was that one time he and Johnny Hendricks went noodling. That's another wrestling talk story. But we look at the depth. You mentioned those three seniors with Brayton Lee, Lucas Davison, and Mason Paris. Those three on their own, they actually probably could have been part of Team USA had this been anywhere else. But how important was it for those seniors to get these guys in the match? Say, you know what, this is going to be in Indiana. This is something that you guys, you talked about it. It could be the hardest match of their career, but from your perspective, you've always tried to do a lot with Indiana wrestling. Beyond the matchups, I mean, the importance of saying, you know what, this is something important for the state of Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, Brayton, one of the biggest reasons we're having it at Brownsburg was because Brayton, he's pretty much he's a rock star from everything I've heard down there. He's actually the head of the Spirit group for Friday night football games. They have different themes and stuff, and he's like the head of that. I don't know how he was doing that with like all his visits this fall, but that was pretty big having it there. It's his hometown. He's going to have hopefully about 1,000 guys come just to watch him wrestle. In Mason Paris, great kid. Both those guys, when we announced it, I had them on a hangout, and they didn't know. I just told them, hey, I want you on this. Be about a half hour. We're going to talk some wrestling. It's going to be a surprise. And the looks on their faces were awesome, especially when Brayton figured out that it was across the street at his home gym to be able to showcase his talents. He was pretty excited. Obviously, Davison, another great kid, just always really polite, come up to him, says hi. Tough wrestler, obviously comes from a pretty good family. His brother's at Michigan, and he's going to Northwestern. So it's just great to showcase those kids' talents. And, people don't realize how good these guys really are without seeing, they see them just dismantle Indiana guys every day, but now they're going to wrestle a guy that's a top 2 or 3 guy in the country, and they're going to see how really good these guys are. And, the future is pretty bright for these kids in the next 4 or 5 years when they're in college.
One thing I like about Indiana, it's one of the few states that actually has one state championship. They don't call it state or states. They call it the state finals there. So just talk about how the state really, its qualification process, what the thought process from the coaches, from the small schools to the big schools about what it means to have one state championship within the state of Indiana.
It gets pretty heated. There's a lot of people that are very much, on the fence or for one, having a couple classes or just one. Our state series is very, very unique. And not only that it is only one class, it also has, it's pretty much single elimination. We have 4 stages. We have a sectional, regional, semi-state, then state. Sectional is the only one with full wrestlebacks. After that, to qualify for regional, you got to be placed in the top 4 out of 8 guys, which means you basically just have to win your first match. So there's some tough matches. You get thrown in a headlock and get pinned first round at regional, you're done. Your season's over. Get caught in defensive pin. Had that happen a few times in my career. First round regional, your kid's done. Semi-state, there's 16-man bracket, and you got to make the top 4. So if there's some just dreaded, ugly, what we call ticket round matches every year between state placers and guys that are top 2, 3, 4 in the state, and they're battling each other for a state berth just to get a ticket to state. And every year you cringe at it, but I mean that's what our system is. And then obviously our top 16 make it to state. If you lose Friday night, you're done, no placement. And then if you lose in the semifinals, you drop down for 3rd. So we have a little bit of a pseudo wrestle back for 5th, but it's pretty tough as far as being able to qualify. And just, you can't have an off match in those matches that are, ticket round matches or your season's over. And like Brayton Lee, he has 1 loss on his career. It was in the ticket round match. The kid just came out to wrestle and went after him and ended up beating him. That's the only loss in his career, semi-state. So those type of things happen every year, and it's one of those things that it's a part of our sport, and it's very heartbreaking for a coach and kid, but it just adds that ticket round electricity is just crazy. I mean, you can just feel the tenseness of the kids knowing that one mistake and your season's over. It's very interesting. I'd compare it to almost the blood round at NCAAs where your season, this is what your season comes down to, is basically one match.
and in some cases careers. So that's kind of got to be a double-edged sword when it comes to even getting your club kids or your kids at Carroll prepared for the next level. Because on one hand, yeah, it's tough. You're a state champion out of Indiana. You're pretty tough. But on the same point, you've got kids that, one bad match, 2 weeks ago, you're not even on the college radar in some cases, and they have to use Fargo or Scholastic duels or junior duels and things like this, Disney, to get noticed on the college level. So there's kind of a little bit of a give and take with the dynamic of the one class there.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of kids that, you see every year that, are college material, maybe not D1, but D2, D3, NAIA type kids that are tough, just get their hearts broken year after year. We had a kid this year finally punches ticket to state 3 years in a row, lost in the ticket round. And last year he was up like 8-2 and just gassed. That round is just so stressful. I mean, it's hard for a kid. You're talking about a 16, 17-year-old kid. The pressure of that round is just immense on those kids. And it's like I said earlier, is the electricity of that ticket round match. Everyone's just on edge, and you see just crazy upsets. You see anything can happen there. And then that next round, that semifinal round, the air just feels so much thinner because, these guys have punched their tickets and they know, they're getting, they know they're going on to next week, and now just, figuring out what place you're getting here.
A little bit about your background. You wrestled at Findlay, and was that during the NAI year, or was that during the Division II transition?
Both. We wrestled my first 2 years or 3 years. We were NAIA, and then we went right into D2. We didn't have any transition. We had transition while we were at NAIA. Then my last 2 years we were D2. So we never had to sit out any years. We had a national championship every year.
So when you look at that, and the kids you're coaching, again, whether it be at the club or at the high school level, a lot of the focus is on Division I, and you've got a lot of Division I quality kids in this Dream Team Classic lineup. But what's one thing about your experiences that you've been able to kind of tell your kids about going the routes outside of Division I? Of course, you didn't coach Riley Lefevre when he was at Carroll. You came there afterwards, but he chose to go the Division III route, and not just a Division III route. He went to an all-male college and wrestled Division III and at Wabash. And what can you tell Indiana kids about things outside of Division I that they can succeed and they can really thrive their wrestling?
I have a lot of kids I've coached, and the Lefevre kids, Travis Barquillo, Hayden Lee, who was a national champ for Cumberland's, those guys that all are at different smaller schools. And, I've always encouraged them to go visit those schools. Division I's not for everyone. It is very tough and very demanding academically and athletically. And it's one of those things I just, keep your options open, go see those other schools. I know talking to the kids I've coached that went to the next level, I always encourage them, you don't have to be D1. You can have fun. You can wrestle at the smaller schools, and it's tough competition. Those guys get to go see D1 competition. And I know Riley and the twins and all those other guys, they'd wrestle a lot of D1 level kids. Riley, even last year, I believe, beat an All-American from Nebraska, I believe, at the Iowa State tournament. So one of those things that you get to see that kind of competition, whether you're a D1 or D2 or D3. So always got to encourage them to get that kind of competition outside. And, there's a lot of great schools out there that can really get you a lot of places in life. I know Wabash has a great alumni program that they really support their alumni. And I know Riley's benefited from that. And so has Reese and Connor from that kind of experience there.
I was in Cleveland this year at D3, so I just couldn't turn my head without seeing a Lefevre somewhere. But as we look at the makeup of this team, the power structure in Indiana, based on what I know there's some pretty solid teams up in the northwest portion of the state. And, of course, suburban Indianapolis really has some power teams. How does this makeup of this team work? And, for those who are unfamiliar with Indiana wrestling, is this typical of where the top kids in Indiana are coming from?
It seems to kind of rotate around. Right now, around the Indianapolis area is probably the stronger area. Northwest Indiana's kind of a little bit of a dip. I think they're starting to come back up in the next couple of years. And then the South, we have obviously modern day teams like that. Columbus East is an up-and-coming program. They had 2 state champions this year. So, it's pretty much a good makeup of guys from around the state. We have a little bit from Northeast Indiana. We have a little bit from, Northwest Indiana. Just kind of depends on where those guys shake out as seniors. I know we have some other kids that are from different areas that would have been on here if they were seniors, but just a good solid makeup of kids from all over the state. So it's pretty nice to see, everyone coming together, and it's not just one little area of the state.
One thing we've also got, this thing is going to be streamed live on Flow for those of you who are interested in watching. If you can't make it down to Brownsburg, or if you're somebody from Pennsylvania looking to figure out how to watch it, that's on the Flow Pro subscription. But let's just go down the lineup here. I'm going to talk about the individual matchups, and you can give us a little bit of insight in terms of what to expect, a little background on these kids, because honestly, I've been out of the high school ranking game for a while. I know the big names. I don't know some of these other guys that are in the event, and that's why we bring you Mr. IndianaMat.com on to talk about it. We'll start at 113 pounds. They got rid, actually, back when we were doing this in Virginia, they still had a 103, and now I guess they've kind of moved away from the what became 106 because there's so few seniors at the weight. So we start at 113. Jose Diaz of Wheeler and Sevian Severado of Christian Brothers, Missouri, one of two guys from Christian's Brothers in the event. Severado kind of really made his name last summer by making the junior world team, actually an injury replacement, and ended up finishing second in Greco-Roman. So he had a pretty good season out of Christian Brothers. And what can you tell us about Jose Diaz? What type of wrestler is he?
Diaz is a tough wrestler, hard-nosed kid. Wheeler High School is a small school in Northwest Indiana. They just restarted their program less than 5 years ago, and he was their first state qualifier, first state placer. He has a younger brother that's going to be pretty good too. I think he's a freshman or sophomore this year, but yeah, he's a great kid. I'm going to Franklin and Marshall to wrestle.
Fire up Dips. All right, Diplomats. I know Lancaster, PA. I'm happy to hear that.
Yep. So he's going out there to wrestle. Great kid. Obviously he's done well on not only wrestling on the mat, but off the mat, to be able to go to a school like that. So he's a tough kid. Can't count him out. He's wrestled with the toughest, best kids in the state. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how he plays up against a pretty tough kid in Severado.
Anyway, yeah. And just in case you're wondering about Frank, you got to be pretty smart to go to Franklin and Marshall. So, good quality academic situation there. You were talking about the alumni and the placement at Wabash. F&M is really solid too. I got some friends that are coming out of there working on Wall Street, and you'd be surprised if you met them. Moving to 120, Colin Pointer of Portage and Joey Melendez of Montini. Melendez ranked 7th in the country by both Flow and Intermat. What can you tell us about Colin Pointer?
Pointer's an interesting pick. Right, we had only 3 seniors qualify for state this year at 120, and they all lost on Friday night. So talking to a couple of those guys, I had a couple in mind that weren't able to come due to other reasons. So I started talking to 126 pounders, and Pointer kind of stuck out. He's going to Air Force next year. He placed 4th last year at 120, and his Friday night, our system's very unique, and he ended up, I didn't see the match because I was getting ready to coach, but he ended up trying like a Granby type move or some kind of role like that, and knocked himself out basically, and his season was done. And so, talking to some people, I had a couple other guys in mind. I talked to his coach and stuff. I said, I'd like to give him another shot, at ending his career on a good note. And he's going to Air Force next year. Tough kid. Portage High School, they've been in the national rankings all year long. They're tough as nails, and just giving him another chance to show off his skills, and hopefully he goes out there with a bang.
You mentioned the weight changes. There has typically been an allowance. What is the weight allowance, and how much leeway are states allowed to move guys up and down? Because I know we had 119 pounders using a 7-pound allowance to wrestle 112 plus 7. So what's that weight allowance like for this event?
The weight allowance is 7 pounds again. He's the only one that's out of his weight class. Well, I guess heavyweight is also, but that's heavyweight. But he's the only one out of the weight class just because we didn't have that many guys qualify at 120, and I know he was tough as nails. And I think he was one match from placing just a couple weeks ago at senior nationals too. So he's tough.
Now moving up to 126 pounds, Ty Mills from Brownsburg, Malik Johnson, another kid from Christian Brothers out of Missouri. Ty Mills, Brownsburg, familiar haunt for him. What can the world know about Ty Mills?
Ty Mills is probably one of the most underrated kids in the state. He's going to Duke, obviously, so he's
stop right now. We are at F&M, the Air Force Academy, and Duke. We're talking, I don't know, this might be the smartest dream team collective I've seen so far. I mean, we're 3 for 3, and we're talking about schools that I couldn't even sniff getting in. I probably could have gotten in F&M, but let's talk about, anyway, we don't want to even go there, but wow, that's impressive. F&M, Air Force, and Duke right away. Continue about Mr. Mills from Brownsburg, who was third in the state this year.
Yeah, he was third this year. As a freshman and junior, he was second. Sophomore year, he was third. 4-time top 3 placer. Just tough as nails, battled with all the best kids, guy who was a state champion this year, him and from Avon, which is basically across the street, Asa Garcia, they've wrestled about 25 times in the past 2-3 years, and I think they're like 13-12 against each other. It's a rival. They wrestle each other in a duel in their conference, in the county tournament, and I don't know. I mean, they see each other way too much, it seems. So they've wrestled each other a bunch, and he's right there with them. Just tough as nails kid, and you hate to say it, but you talk about the guys we talk about at NCAA wise, talk about in the state. Who's the best kid to never win it, and his name's in it. Obviously, he was being recruited to a Division I program before this year. So great kid, tough as nails, and obviously it's going to be. I mean, he's beaten a lot of top guys in the off season. He's flirted with being in the national rankings. I know different ones throughout his career. So he's going to be one that, kind of on that bubble and very much in the mix to be able to maybe pull one of those upsets like you talked about.
132 pounds, Real Woods from Montini Catholic, Izzy Style, number 2, number 3, depending on the ranking outfit. And Graham Rooks, you had mentioned Columbus East as a program that's really on the rise. Rook's an undefeated state champion this year, 48-0. I guess that right there tells you that he's pretty good. Didn't have a loss all year. What style of wrestler is he? And a guy like Woods is dynamic. He's got good coaching. He's been successful everywhere. Is this one you circle to be like this is going to be where Graham Rooks makes his national presence known?
Very well could be. Rooks is just a grinder kid that's always in your face, always in great position. Seen him wrestle for 4 years. He's another kid that's top 4 all 4 years in his career, and that's pretty impressive. Considering, like we've talked about, our system, and you got to make the semifinals, and that's not always easy. Tough kid. Him and his brother won state last year, and he won it this year. Great kid. Columbus East program just solid top to bottom, and him and Woods actually wrestled a few weeks ago at the Indiana-Illinois dual meet, which is a seniors from Illinois and Indiana go at it, and I believe it was like a 5-1, 5-2 match. So I have faith in Coach Cooper at Columbus East that they're getting a game plan together and going to take it to him. And Rooks he's been one. He's wrestled everywhere and anywhere in the country. He's gone out to Virginia Beach. He's been to Super 32. He's wrestled at our IndianaMat's tournament. Been everywhere in the country to wrestle, and always right there with the best kids in the country. Another kid that probably is on the bubble to be nationally ranked, but doesn't have those signature wins, but he's as good as any of those guys and can battle with any of those guys. He's going to IU next year, so he's going to be a Division I Big Ten guy also.
It's weird as for an institution now. Indiana's got good academics, just like most schools, pretty much every school in the Big Ten. You've got to be pretty smart to get into the schools, but it's weird. Like Indiana's number 4 on the list so far, which is kind of interesting. Now, you mentioned the IndianaMat's preseason tournament, which a little side note here, folks. Joe is the only guy who probably could have hung with me on #WrestlingShirtAday. As by the time this thing comes out, it will be over. It will be a year by the time this show gets out, because 10 days, actually by the time the event rolls around, it'll be a year. But this one, I'll have a couple days left by the time it gets out. The only reason Joe couldn't hang with me is the rule is you had to post a picture on Twitter with the hashtag, and if you're not connected to social, if you're not connected, you can't post anything. So it was a cruise that ended Joe's run, and I believe with the 900,000 different designs you can get at the IndianaMat's preseason tournament, you probably would have had, you probably can go on 2 years just on stuff from 3X Gear.
Oh yes, yeah. 3Time does a great job, and they've hooked me up. I got 2 more new T-shirts, so I can at least go a couple more days now. So yeah, that's having lots of great T-shirts from the event always helps. That's all my closet's filled with now. I can't even find a regular T-shirt that doesn't say wrestling.
Yeah, well, we're both married with kids, so we don't need to like dress up anymore. The only time I need to do it's like for actual work. All right. 138, Chris Rumpf of Portage and Cole Matthews, Reynolds, PA. This is a tough town, tough wrestling program at Reynolds. Cole Matthews is a guy that kind of sums up that type of mentality. It's the same place that, one Mason Beckman is from. It's Whippeal. It's, there's some hammers that have come out of Reynolds. What can you tell us about Chris Rumpf, state champ, 32-4 this year? College plan, style of wrestling. What do we look for from him?
He's one of the 3 guys that have not committed to college. He's a diamond in the rough. Coached by Leroy Vega, Minnesota legend for obvious reasons. 3-time All-American. Rump's tough as nails. He lost the guy he wrestled in the finals. Lost him earlier in the year and just destroyed him. Just great, slick go behinds. Freak athlete, strong, quick, stays in great position. He's only been wrestling since I think 7th or 8th grade is when he started, and he's 3-time top 4 placer, wasn't varsity as a freshman, and then just burst on the scene. Even gave his sophomore year, he wrestled Chad Redd in the semifinals. Redd was a 4-time undefeated state champion, NCAA All-American as a freshman this year, and gave him a great match. First period, it was 0-0. Redd couldn't touch him. It was everyone, and all of a sudden everyone's starting to look at that match like, holy cow, what's going on here? And he's tough, hard-nosed kid. Those Portage kids are hard-nosed, in your face. They're not going to give you anything easy. So he's the one that's going to be, whoever's going to pick him up late is getting a really solid prospect.
Moving to 145, state runner-up Christian Hunt of Yorktown, 48-1, only loss of the year, 1 point in the state finals. He's going to take on Alex Lloyd from Shakopee up here in Minnesota, ranked at 152, making the move to 145. I'll tell you what, Alex Lloyd, a lot of people don't need to know much about him. This guy's a bruiser. He is technically sound, got great coaching up at Shakopee. Interesting, great backstory as well, as committed to South Dakota State, which may be in flux with Bono leaving for Wisconsin. But with Christian Hunt, 1 loss on the year, probably got something to prove here. Losing just 1-0. First of all, where's he heading to school? Is he committed? And style of wrestling for him?
He's committed to the Army, West Point.
Jeez, this is
Yorktown connection there. They're 3 now. Will be three Yorktown wrestlers there. So yeah, another pretty solid commit there.
You just got to get. I mean, you just don't go. I'm going to go to West Point. A lot of things got to happen for you to go to West Point. That's crazy.
He's a great kid. I had him on a dual team a couple of years ago. Great kid. Just solid. Yorktown kids wrestle great. They always hold great position. Smart mat wrestlers, knowing where the out of bounds line is, knowing when to attack, and wrestles really smart. He actually started his career at 106 and was 132 actually last year. So he's grown a lot. 2-time state runner up, 3-time placer, and he's going to be one that just keeps improving. He actually was a pretty solid football player for Yorktown this past year. Got a lot of accolades from that, weighing 150 pounds, maybe soaking wet. So that shows you what kind of athlete he is and how, great, team player and someone that's, you can't just roll over.
Also, and West Point, the academy, it's actually known for fattening people up in the right ways, because a guy out of Ocean Lakes High School in Virginia Beach, John Anderson, who was on the Greco ladder and wrestled at 185 pounds or 85 kilos, whatever the international Greco weight is. Yeah, he graduated high school as a 112-pounder and wrestled 165 his senior year. All that at West Point. So, they definitely put you on the right the weight training regimen. So if you said he's just jumping up in weight classes, I don't know. Maybe we see a 174-pounder in our future, but I don't know. I'm not talking about growth patterns here. Next up, probably this is probably the one match that's worth the price of admission, outside if you're a fan of the upper weights, because Mason Paris is obviously going to get a draw, but in his home gym, Brayton Lee, Ja'Cory Teamer, 2-3, depending on what you look at. This is a highlight match upon highlight matches. Teamer extremely fun to watch. With represented Team USA in the offseason at the Cadet World Championships. Brayton Lee going to Minnesota. Team are going to Arizona State. What else can you tell me that I already thrown out there just in credentials?
Brayton Lee, like I said, he's a rock star at Brownsburg. Everyone loves him. They're a great kid. Just kid that's always has a smile on his face. I've never seen him without a smile on his face. Great kid, great family. He's tough as nails. I'm looking forward to this match. Him and Teamer is just going to be a crazy match. I mean, Brayton's a goer. The kid has a motor like no other. And I don't know how to contain him. I'm just glad, get to see him wrestle again. Home gym, gonna have he's gonna get pumped for this, and I know he's gonna have a lot of home mat advantage in that match. So I'm hoping that pulls him through. Teamer's tough as nails. Watch some of his matches from senior nationals, and that kid's good. He's real good. He's good. To quote the great Billy Madison, he's good. 160 Gleason Mapes of Center Grove and nationally ranked Jared Frenick of West Fargo. They are the Packers of West Fargo. Let's see, that's probably about 10 miles outside of the turf, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. Apparently it's reopening soon too, Joe. Ah, nice. I might have to make another trip up there.
This being primarily talking about high school wrestling, we'll probably refrain talking about what goes on at the turf, and it's not one of those type of places. It's just a dive bar. My show, I'll talk about it all I want. Gleason Mapes, his brother wrestled at Chattanooga. Well, it was a national qualifier. Frenick ranked 6th, 7th in the country, depending on the poll. Mapes, state runner-up, 2 losses on the year. What can we expect to see out of his style of wrestling, and what's going to make this a competitive match from the Indiana standpoint?
Mappus, he is going to.
Thank you for correcting me on that, Mappus. Jeez,
he's going to Indianapolis. Lone D2 commit.
Go Hounds! Go Hounds!
They're sniping some pretty solid kids, and Coach Worthen does a great job there, and I'm excited to see them keep growing, getting kids like Mappus in there. His older brother wrestled for Indianapolis, so a little bit of brotherly love there. So he's tough as nails. Another tough kid, 3-time top 4 placer. His freshman year, he qualified for state, and he had 20 losses. Literally, he had 20 losses as a freshman and qualified for state. Just he got hot at the right time, and I know Center Grove wrestles a tough schedule, top to bottom, and he has had some good, tough losses put together at the right time. And with our system, obviously, you put it together at semi-state, you win those first 2 matches. It doesn't matter what your record is, you're going to state. Another kid, he stays in good position. He can wrestle you from every position. His 2 losses were to the eventual state champion. He lost in the finals to him, and also at semi-state, Nick South from Columbus East. But Mappus is a great kid, tough wrestler. Just going to he'll stay in good position, and he's another one that, like I said, he's not going to get a lot of national rankings love, but he's one that can battle with some of the best kids in the country.
One of 2 wrestlers ranked number 1 universally in their weight classes. Travis Whitlake, of course, Malik Johnson ranked number 1 by flow at his weight, but we've got Mason Paris, the other number 1. But Travis Whitlake, Marshfield, Oregon, dynamic, outstanding. His shoe game is also on point, and I'm not much of a shoe file. He is one of the most complete wrestlers coming out of the senior class from the state of Oregon, and he's going to be taking on Noah Warren, a state champion from one of the recognizable names in Indiana wrestling, Perry Meridian, a school that's had a lot of great tradition. It's one of those places that you don't have to be from Indiana, you just have to know a little bit about wrestling to have heard of Perry Meridian. 46-1 this year. He is a senior. Where's he going, and what's he got for Whitlake?
He is actually one of the other ones that is not committed. But Warren, tough as nails, Southside Indy kid. His 1 loss, he bumped up to wrestle number 1 ranked guy at 182 in our state duels championship. Lost by 2 or 3 points. He was within a takedown late in the match and went after it and lost, and that decided the duel meet. His last match of the duel. Great kid. He jumped from 152 to 170 this year. And I didn't expect him to be as big as he was. Tough kid. He got stitches. Literally, he got stitches in the middle of his finals match. He laid down on the mat, and we're like, what's going on? He had a cut on his chin, and we're like, what's going on here? It's like, I bet he got stitches. I saw him afterward. I go, did you really get stitches? Like, yep. And he showed them to me. Tough kid. South side of Indianapolis, Perry Meridian's a great program. Those kids are all homegrown. They work hard. They're just solid kids. They were also a team nationally ranked this year, and they didn't have a lot of the hammers. They had obviously Warren and a couple other guys in their lineup, but they had just a solid dual lineup, top to bottom, and they actually beat Indianapolis Cathedral in a duel, and Cathedral ended up winning our IHSA state tournament at the state finals. So it tells you how good they are. Just a great program, top to bottom, and always one that you'll see kids from Perry placing at Fargo or Super 32 almost every year.
Number 3 and number 6, Jared Kradiger of Waterford, Wisconsin. Connor Graber from Northridge. Interesting about Mr. Graber, 48-1, first state champion in school history. Again, I'm trying to find the same way to ask the same question, but how to do it 13 different ways is always the key in asking the question. So what do I need to know about Connor Graber from Northridge?
Graber is a hardworking kid out of northern Indiana. Just he actually wrestled a Brownsburg kid in the finals, and just it was a close match. Kept going, needed a takedown late. Scored about 30 seconds to go. Just great single leg. Just figured out a way. They both looked like they're gassed. They both looked like the pressure of being under the lights was getting to him, and he found a way to win. Great kid, great family. He actually on his team they had, considering cousins and stuff, there were like 4 or 5 guys on their starting lineup that were all related within first cousins and stuff. So really close knit team out of northern Indiana, around about the South Bend area. His cousin was in his corner. That was a 2-time runner up for Northridge, and he was the first champ. So he got to kind of say he's the best Graber wrestler ever right now. So pretty neat to see that kind of that program do well. They have great coaches, great kids out of that program.
You got a college commitment for him?
No, we do not yet. He's the last one that has not committed.
Wow. So yeah, there seems to be some there seems to be some talent out there. And again, we've talked about the one class, the pros and cons for it. Now we move to 195. One of the highlight seniors, Lucas Davison of Chesterton, nationally ranked in the top 5 in the country, going to be taking on another guy's the top 5 in the country, but up at 220. Anthony Walters from Bishop McCourt of Pennsylvania. Lucas Davison, this guy's quality all around.
Yes, he is. A great family, great kids. He's tough as nails. His brother Andrew, who's at Michigan right now, wrestled Walters in the Cadet Greco finals a couple years ago and beat Walters. So I think Walters is coming after the family a little bit harder now. Lucas, placed first at state. His sophomore year, he was right there. He handed the state champion his only loss during that year, and then they end up wrestling again in a rubber match in the ticket round, and Davison ended up losing, so he didn't qualify as a sophomore. But the state champ's only loss was to Davison, so it tells you how good he was and a little bit of our system, the fun of our system. He's placed Super 32, going to Northwestern, obviously another pretty good school. I'm thinking we might need to have a spelling bee before the event, so at least we have a little bit of an advantage. So, tough kid, great family. Always, obviously going to Northwestern shows you a lot about his character and about what he does on and off the mat.
220, circle it, Mason Paris, big dog. From a developmental standpoint, a lot of buzz came around this kid after his sophomore year. What is the state of Indiana known about Mason Paris that the rest of the country hasn't known for a long time?
He's really good.
I said something that the country hasn't known, Joe. Everybody knows that.
He had some D1 football offers, was very much looking into playing football in college. I think at the end of it came down to he's a top 2 or 3 heavyweight in the country right now, and he wasn't top 2 or 3 linebacker, but he's tough as nails. I remember one of the guys I worked with, watch him play in the state finals. They said they just give him the ball and he just run over people, and he just had that motor that wouldn't stop. And obviously that's the wrestler's mentality that I'll carry this team on my back type thing. Great kid. Obviously he's going to Michigan, another pretty good school there. Coach Bourmet's getting a pretty nice class Paris only had one loss on his career, lost in the state semifinals to the eventual state champion. And he, in that match, about 30 seconds to go, and Paris got a takedown, then cut him. And the match he was down by one, so ended up almost getting another takedown, almost got a stall call. Price, a lot of people say he should have got a stall call to send it to overtime, but he made the choice about 20, 25, 30 seconds left in the match to cut him and go for another takedown to go for the win. That takes some guts as a freshman at 170 pounds, considering he started his career at 170, went up to 220, and, only one career loss. I don't care what state you're in. That's pretty impressive.
Not bad at all. Should see a pretty good one here as his opponent, Brandon Whitman, out of Dundee, Michigan, has signed to wrestle for North Carolina. So we actually have kind of skipped over a lot of these guys that have committed to various colleges from the the Team USA team rather, but mainly because those are names you know. Of course, we wanted to mention that Walters at the previous weight class had committed to Drexel. You can also check those out at either Flow or at Intermat, wherever you want to go for your commitment lists. You can look up those guys. And Indiana will be getting a heavyweight, Brandon Strack, out of Merrillville. He is another wrestling heavyweight Strack. So, Sean Strack at Purdue. Pretty sure we weren't going to see him go to Purdue with his brother just being a redshirt freshman. But what can you tell us about Brandon?
Well, Brandon just verbally, or I don't know if he actually signed just the other day, going to be interesting household family gatherings. He's going to go to IU and wrestle for the Hoosiers. So a little bit of house divided. I don't know what mom and dad are going to do about it. So you could see a Brandon versus Sean match in a couple years, which I'm not sure how that's going to go. But he wrestled 220 this year as a runner-up. He actually placed fifth last year at heavyweight, dropped down to 220. I would not want to see what the grocery bill is at the Streck household, to say the least, because they have another younger brother. He's only 170 pounds. So, they breed him big there. But another kid, Maryville hard-nosed program, Coach Molinado always produces great kids, especially great heavyweights. And Streck's one of those guys. He just stays in solid position, always does the right thing. And, he's going to be a good one for IU. IU, great pickup for them.
Yeah, his opponent, Jake Levin, good out of Vacaville, California, ranked in the top 10, top 15, again, depending on the ranking. Actually has signed to compete Division I, but in football, he's a 3-star recruit and has signed to play the offensive line. He's an offensive guard. Listed 6'3", 250. I'm not sure how these football numbers will stack up. He'll probably be 6'8", 330 by the time he's in the press guide for Oregon State, because you know how football numbers go. But an offensive guard signed to play football at Oregon State will be Mr. Streck's opponent. So we've gone through the lineups. We've gone through the details. You've found out everything you need to know, and maybe not more, because you can watch more on Flow Pro on April 14th, 6 p.m., and that's Eastern time, because Indiana – do you guys do daylight savings time yet? Am I off key on that? Did you guys finally change over?
Yes, we do finally do daylight savings time. We started doing that about 10-ish years ago. I still don't like it, especially with young kids.
or the fact that when the time zone drifts over states, I mean, it's like it's like, okay, we're in here. Wait, Indiana. It's like Arizona. It's like you never know what time it is in Arizona. But anything we need to know about it, where can they follow? If they can't watch, I'm assuming IndianaMat is going to have some type of coverage.
Yeah, we'll be having our coverage on IndianaMat. We have all the information there for tickets, for streaming, for anything you want to know, all the matchups. We also obviously follow us on our social media, at IndianaMat on Twitter, or IndianaMat on Facebook. We're going to have all our coverage there. We'll do some Facebook Lives from our practices, talking to the kids and all that fun stuff. So I know Flo is going to put a good coverage together and, showcase these kids, like they should be, some great kids, not only great wrestlers. Obviously, we highlighted some of their commitments, some of the great kids off the mat too, that be able to go to the schools like that. They're obviously pretty smart. So I'm excited to showcase these guys on the big stage. There's nothing else really going on April 14th. Need a little bit of wrestling fix. So let's go out, let's watch some great wrestling there.
Yeah, IndianaMat.com. You got a hashtag for this thing yet?
Dream Team 18.
Dream Team 18. And just for some historical reference, folks, this is the 21st. Iowa's hosted it 7 times, Illinois 3, Minnesota twice, and then a collective of states, including my home state of Virginia, Wisconsin, California, Texas, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio have hosted it at least one time. Of course, IndianaMat.com also has some information on these lineups and how to watch again on Flow on April 14th, 6 p.m., Brownsburg High School, Brownsburg, Indiana, just a little bit to the northwest of Indianapolis if you're in the neighborhood. Joe Caprino, we're going to have you on the show again to talk about Indiana Mat, the National Wrestling Media Association's website of the year for 2016, we might add. Good crew and good things you've got going on there. But thanks for the time and thanks for educating us on the Dream Team Classic and what we can look for from Team Indiana.
Thank you very much for having me.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/get-short-time to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.